I'll never forget a conversation I had with a close friend who had just ended yet another relationship with someone who couldn't show up for her. She sat across from me, stirring her coffee, eyes heavy with the weight of a question I think so many of us have asked ourselves at some point. Why do I keep attracting people who can't love me back? And I could feel her frustration, not just with them, but with herself, because she wasn't new to this pattern. She could see it happening, almost like watching a slow motion replay of something she had already lived through. Different person, same story, and she was exhausted. I told her something I wish someone had told me years ago. Sometimes it's not just about who we attract, it's about what we accept. And that truth, it hit hard. Because listen, love isn't supposed to feel like a guessing game. It isn't supposed to leave us questioning our worth or working overtime just to get scraps of affection. But when we keep choosing people who hold us at a distance, when we mistake inconsistency for passion, when we convince ourselves that this time will be different, we have to stop and ask, what is this pattern really about? Because if we don't face it, we repeat it again and again. So let's talk about it. Why do we keep falling for emotionally unavailable partners? What's really happening beneath the surface? And most importantly, how do we finally break free? We accept the love we think we deserve. That's a tough truth to swallow, isn't it? Because if we take it seriously, if we really let it sink in, it forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions. What have I been accepting and why? I remember talking to someone who had been through heartbreak after heartbreak, and she was exhausted. She kept finding herself in relationships with people who couldn't meet her emotionally, partners who were distant, inconsistent, always half in, half out. And she said something that stuck with me. I don't get it. I know I want love. I know I deserve more than this. So why do I keep choosing people who don't choose me back? And I told her something I wish someone had told me years ago. Wanting better for yourself and believing you deserve it are two very different things. See, we all have this internal blueprint for love, this deeply ingrained set of beliefs about what relationships should feel like. And the tricky part, most of us don't even realize we have it. It's shaped by childhood, past relationships, the way we were treated, the way we learned to seek affection. Some of us were taught explicitly or subtly that love is something you earn, not something you receive freely. Maybe we grew up around emotionally unavailable caregivers, or maybe we had early relationships where love felt inconsistent, where one day we were adored and the next we were ignored. And if that's our blueprint, if that's the love we learn to navigate, then even as adults, we unconsciously gravitate toward what feels familiar, not necessarily what's healthy. And here's where it gets really tricky. The part of us that wants deep, steady, reciprocated love, that part might recognize the red flags. It might know logically, I deserve better. But the part of us that's been conditioned to prove our worth, that part doesn't want to walk away. That part says, if I just love them harder, if I just show them how good I am, if I just wait long enough, they'll finally choose me. But love is not a prize for good behavior. It is not something you earn by being patient, by proving your worth, by shrinking yourself down to fit someone else's limitations. And the moment we stop accepting love that makes us feel small, the moment we stop chasing people who can't show up for us, is the moment we start rewriting the script. And let's be honest, that's not easy. If you've spent years believing that love requires effort, proving, chasing, it feels unnatural to let love come to you. It feels uncomfortable to walk away from something that mirrors what you've always known. But that discomfort, that's the sign you're growing. Because healing isn't about waiting for the right person to come along and love you better. Healing is about believing deeply, fully, that you never had to fight for love in the first place. So if you've been wondering why you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners, maybe the better question is, what part of me believes this is the love I have to accept? Because once you answer that, everything starts to change. Familiarity feels safe even when it hurts. That's the thing about patterns. We don't just repeat them because we want to. We repeat them because on some level, they feel like home, even when home was painful, even when home was lonely, even when home meant walking on eggshells, never quite sure where you stood. I once had someone say to me, "I don't understand why I keep ending up in relationships that leave me feeling so empty." And my first question back was, did love ever feel full to you? Because if we grow up in environments where love is inconsistent, where affection comes in waves, where connection is laced with distance, our nervous system learns to expect it. Not just expect it, but seek it out. Because here's the wild part. The human brain doesn't crave what's best for us. It craves what's familiar. And so when we step into adulthood and start looking for love, we don't just look for what we want. We look for what feels like something we recognize. And if what we recognize is emotional unavailability, we might find ourselves drawn to it over and over again without even realizing why. Not because we like being in relationships where we have to question our worth, not because we want to chase after someone who can't fully open up, but because on some deep unconscious level, we think this is how love works. The first time I really understood this, it hit me hard. Because it's one thing to know we have patterns, it's another thing entirely to realize we've been mistaking those patterns for love. And that's where the real work begins. Because if we've learned to associate emotional distance with love, then healthy, stable, fully present love, it might not feel exciting at first. It might even feel boring. Not because it is, but because it's different. And different for our nervous system can feel unsafe, even when it's exactly what we need. So how do we break the cycle? How do we unlearn the idea that love has to feel like a chase? We start by learning to sit with the discomfort of safety. We start by recognizing that certainty, someone showing up consistently without the highs and lows, doesn't mean the connection is dull. It means the connection is safe. And for some of us, safety is the thing we've been running from, even as we say it's what we want. This isn't easy work. It's uncomfortable to retrain your heart, to teach yourself that the kind of love you've been drawn to isn't the kind of love that will ever truly make you feel seen. But the more we choose differently, the more we lean into steady, honest connection, the more we stop mistaking the absence of anxiety for the absence of love. Because real love isn't supposed to feel like uncertainty. It's supposed to feel like home. The kind of home where you don't have to earn your place. We mistake anxiety for chemistry. That stomach-flipping, heart-racing, can't think straight feeling, we've been told that's passion, that's a spark, that's the intoxicating pull of love. But sometimes, oftentimes, that feeling isn't love at all, it's anxiety, and it's keeping us stuck in relationships that don't serve us. I remember a conversation I had with someone who told me, if it doesn't feel like fireworks, I don't want it. And I get it. We're wired to crave intensity. We want that rush, that intoxicating back and forth, that deep pull towards someone who feels just out of reach. But here's what's tricky. Not all sparks are signs of connection. Sometimes they're warning signs. Sometimes they're just our nervous system recognizing an old, familiar pattern of unpredictability and calling it attraction. And the science backs this up. There's something called intermittent reinforcement, where rewards are unpredictable, where affection is given in bursts, then withheld. And this kind of reinforcement, it creates the strongest psychological attachment. It's why people get hooked on gambling, because the uncertainty of when they'll win makes them chase the win even harder. The same thing happens in relationship. When someone is hot one moment and cold the next, when they love bomb us only to pull away, when they make us earn their affection, our brain doesn't see this as a red flag. It sees it as excitement, as chemistry. And before we know it, we're hooked. Not because the connection is deep, but because the inconsistency has trained our nervous system to crave the high of finally getting their attention. And let me say this as clearly as possible. Real love is not supposed to feel like a roller coaster. Love doesn't make you question where you stand. It doesn't give and take affection like a game. It doesn't make you feel like you have to fight for every scrap of attention. So how do we unlearn this? How do we start recognizing real connection instead of mistaking anxiety for attraction? First, we have to get honest with ourselves about what we've been calling chemistry. If the spark we're feeling is actually just the fear of abandonment disguised as passion, then we need to sit with that. We need to ask ourselves, would I still want this person if their love was steady? If there was no chase, if there were no highs and lows? Because real love isn't built on adrenaline, it's built on trust. Second, we have to learn to tolerate peace. For a lot of us, steady, consistent love feels unnatural at first. We might meet someone who shows up fully, who texts back, who doesn't play games, who doesn't make us question our worth, and we might find ourselves thinking, this feels boring. But it's not boring, it's healthy. And we have to train our nervous system to recognize safety as something desirable, not something dull. And finally, we have to let go of the idea that love is supposed to feel hard. That doesn't mean relationships don't take work, but love itself, love should feel safe, love should feel steady, love should feel like an exhale, not a constant state of, am I enough? Am I too much? Will they stay? Because the real chemistry, the kind that lasts, isn't built on anxiety. It's built on trust, on presence, on two people who show up for each other fully, without conditions, without games, without the need to chase. And that kind of love, that's the kind worth waiting for. We accept the love we think we have to work for. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us learned that love isn't something we simply receive, it's something we earn. And when that belief takes root, it's powerful. It shapes everything. It influences who we choose, how we love, what we tolerate. I remember talking to someone who said, I just don't understand. I give everything I have in relationships, and yet I always end up with people who make me feel like I'm still not enough. And my heart broke a little because I knew exactly what she meant. When love has always been conditional, when it's always come with a set of unspoken rules about what you have to be or do to deserve it, it's easy to think that's just how love works, that it's something you have to prove yourself worthy of, something that can be taken away the moment you stop meeting someone else's expectations. But here's what I need you to hear. Love is not a performance. You do not have to earn your right to be chosen. And yet so many of us find ourselves in relationships where we're doing exactly that, working overtime, proving our worth, bending ourselves into smaller and smaller versions just to fit into someone else's world. And we call it love. But if we have to work that hard just to be seen, is it really love? Psychologists talk a lot about attachment wounds, these emotional imprints we carry from early relationships, especially the ones that shaped how we learn to give and receive love. And if you grew up feeling like love had to be won, then guess what? You might find yourself chasing after emotionally unavailable people, trying to crack their code, trying to be enough to finally get them to stay. And here's where it gets really hard to unlearn. When love has always been something we've had to fight for, steady love can feel foreign, it can feel unnatural, maybe even undeserved, because when we've been conditioned to equate effort with value, the idea of someone just choosing us freely without conditions can feel almost wrong, like we're missing a step, like we should be doing something to earn it. And this is where the healing begins, because the truth is, real love, the kind that is deep, steady, unwavering, is never something you should have to chase. If someone's presence in your life feels like a prize you have to win, if their affection feels like something that must be constantly maintained and protected, then that's not love, that's a transaction. So how do we break this pattern? First, we get honest about our own beliefs around love. Do we believe we have to be perfect to be worthy of love? Do we believe that the right person will finally prove that we are enough? Because if we're walking into relationships with the belief that our worth is tied to how well we perform, then we're setting ourselves up to stay in dynamics where we're always performing. Second, we practice receiving love instead of proving we deserve it. This can feel deeply uncomfortable at first. If you're used to relationships where you're always the giver, where you're always the one working to hold things together, then stepping into a space where love is freely given, where it's mutual, where you don't have to work for it, can feel unfamiliar. And that's okay. But we have to let ourselves sit in that discomfort instead of running back to what's familiar. And finally, We stop mistaking emotional unavailability for something we need to fix. If someone is distant, inconsistent, half in and half out, that is not an invitation to prove your worth. That is an invitation to walk away. Because love is not supposed to be something you earn. Love is supposed to be something you receive. We fear the very love we say we want. Sounds strange, doesn't it? That we could want something so badly, real, deep, unwavering love, yet the moment it actually shows up, something inside us resists. But this happens more often than we think, because wanting love and feeling safe in love are two very different things. I remember a conversation with someone who said, "I don't get it. I finally met someone who is kind, consistent, emotionally available, and I feel like running." And I just nodded, because that feeling, that deep discomfort when love feels too safe, that's real and it's powerful. See, if we've spent years, maybe even our whole lives, chasing love, fighting for love, proving ourselves worthy of love, then the moment someone just gives it to us, no strings attached, no games, no need to earn it, it doesn't always feel like the relief we expect. Sometimes it feels terrifying, because real, healthy love, it requires something from us. It asks us to show up. It asks us to be seen. And for people who have spent years protecting themselves from rejection, from disappointment, from loss, that kind of vulnerability can feel overwhelming. It's like this. Imagine you've been holding your breath underwater for a long time. Maybe you've gotten so used to holding your breath that it feels normal. And then one day, someone pulls you up, gives you air, offers you a place to breathe fully. You'd think the first thing you do is inhale, right? But no, sometimes the first thing we do is panic, because breathing, that's new, that's different. And different, even when it's good, can feel unsafe. That's what happens when we meet love that doesn't require chasing, love that is steady, love that asks us to put down our armor. It feels new, it feels unfamiliar. And so sometimes instead of stepping into it, we sabotage it. We pull away, we convince ourselves the spark isn't there, we nitpick, we find flaws, we tell ourselves it's too good to be true, not because the love is wrong, but because safety itself feels unfamiliar. So how do we unlearn this? First, we have to recognize that fear of love isn't the same as lack of love. Just because something feels uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's new, and new takes time to get used to. Second, we have to notice when we're pushing love away out of habit, when we tell ourselves, I don't deserve this, or this feels too easy, or maybe I should just leave before I get hurt. We need to pause. Ask ourselves, is this fear or is this truth? Because fear will always try to keep us in the familiar, even when the familiar isn't good for us. And third, we have to be willing to let love in, even when it feels unnatural, even when it makes us uncomfortable, even when every part of us wants to retreat, because love, the real, deep, lasting kind, only works when we let ourselves receive it. At the end of the day, love isn't something we're supposed to chase. It's something we're supposed to choose. And sometimes the hardest part of love isn't finding it, it's allowing ourselves to believe we're worthy of it when it finds us. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's this. Love is not something you have to earn, chase, or fix. The right love, the kind that is steady, deep, and real, will never make you question your worth. It will never ask you to shrink, to prove, to fight for scraps of affection. Love, the kind we all deserve, is something we step into fully. It's something we receive, not something we win. But unlearning old patterns takes time. It takes awareness. It takes a willingness to sit in the discomfort of breaking cycles that have kept us stuck. And it takes courage. The courage to let go of the chase, to stop settling for the familiar when the familiar isn't good for us, and to believe, really believe, that we are worthy of a love that stays. And when that kind of love comes, when it arrives steady and kind, asking nothing from you except to be exactly who you are, I hope you let yourself receive it. I hope you stay. I hope you breathe it in and realize that love was never meant to be a battle. It was always meant to be a home. Good luck. You've got this.